The first panic attack happened in Paris. Not in some dark alley, not during a robbery, not while I was alone. It happened beneath the golden lights of the Eiffel Tower while hundreds of strangers laughed around me, clinked wine glasses together, kissed beneath the night sky, and took photographs that would later become proof of their happiness. And there I was, 33 years old, standing in one of the most beautiful cities on earth, unable to breathe. I remember gripping the cold metal railing near the Seine River while my chest tightened so violently I thought my heart was finally giving out. A violinist played softly nearby. Tour boats drifted across the black water. Somewhere behind me, a couple argued in Italian before suddenly laughing again. Everything around me felt cinematic, alive, beautiful. But inside me, there was only noise. A terrible emptiness that had followed me across oceans, airports, beaches, train stations, rooftop bars, temples, deserts, hotel rooms, and cities glowing with neon lights. For 7 years I had tried to outrun that feeling, and standing there in Paris, gasping for air beneath the brightest lights in the city, I realized something horrifying. It had followed me everywhere. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm from Portland, Oregon, and this is the story of how I spent years traveling the world searching for happiness, only to discover the one thing I had been avoiding the entire time was myself. I'm telling this story from my childhood bedroom, the same room where glow-in-the-dark stars still cling weakly to the ceiling from when I was 12. Outside, rain taps softly against the windows. My mother is asleep upstairs. The television downstairs hums quietly because she always leaves it on at night, even when nobody is watching. I moved back into this house 8 months ago. At 33 years old, with 2 suitcases, a burned-out nervous system, and absolutely no idea who I was anymore. If you had looked at my social media before that, you probably would have envied me. Thousands of followers, Santorini sunsets, Bali beaches, wine in Tuscany, motorbike rides through Vietnam, street food in Bangkok, cherry blossoms in Japan, desert nights in Morocco, yoga retreats in Costa Rica, snow-covered cabins in Switzerland. People messaged me constantly. Your life is my dream. You're so brave. You're truly living. I wish I had your freedom. I answered those messages with smiling emojis while sitting alone in hotel rooms crying into overpriced room service hamburgers. That's the part nobody posts online. Nobody posts the silence after the photograph. Nobody posts themselves staring at a hotel ceiling at 2 a.m, wondering why they still feel hollow after seeing the most beautiful places on earth. Nobody posts the exhaustion of pretending every breathtaking view healed something inside them. Maybe that's why I'm finally telling this story now, because I'm tired. Tired of the fantasy, tired of pretending movement equals healing, tired of watching people destroy themselves, chasing a version of happiness that doesn't exist. Because I know how seductive escape can become, especially after heartbreak, especially after loss, especially after your entire life collapses quietly while everyone else thinks you're doing amazing. For me, it started when I was 26. Back then, my life looked stable, maybe even beautiful from the outside. I lived in Seattle with my boyfriend, Ryan. We shared a small apartment with exposed brick walls, hanging plants, and a dog named Murphy who slept at the foot of our bed every night. Ryan worked in architecture. I worked in marketing for a wellness company downtown. We had routines, Saturday coffee runs, Sunday grocery shopping, Netflix marathons, dinner parties with friends, conversations about buying a house one day. Ordinary things, the kind that quietly become your entire life before you even notice. I thought we were building forever. Then one Thursday evening in November, he sat across from me at our kitchen table and destroyed everything in less than 5 minutes. I don't think I'm in love with you anymore. That sentence. People underestimate how a single sentence can split a life directly down the middle. I still remember the smell of garlic bread in the oven, the rain tapping against the windows, the way I blinked at him because my brain genuinely couldn't process what he'd said. I laughed at first, not because it was funny, because shock is strange. But he didn't laugh. He looked exhausted, guilty, already emotionally gone. He told me he'd been unhappy for a long time, that we'd become roommates, that he needed something different. Then he said the sentence that stayed with me for years. I think you stopped being happy a long time ago, Claire. At the time, I hated him for saying it, but eventually I realized he was right. I had stopped feeling alive long before he left. The breakup destroyed me anyway. Not dramatically, not movie style. It happened slowly, like a building sinking inch by inch beneath the ground. I stopped sleeping properly, stopped eating normally, started functioning mechanically. I smiled at coworkers while secretly having anxiety attacks in office bathrooms. Everywhere I looked, I saw evidence of the future we were supposed to have. The coffee mugs we bought together, vacation magnets on the refrigerator, his sweatshirt hanging behind the bedroom door. Then one night, 2 months after he moved out, I opened Instagram and saw photographs of him hiking with another woman. That was the night I booked my first solo trip. Thailand. 2 weeks. No plan. I told everyone I needed adventure, healing, freedom. The truth? I just needed to disappear. And for a little while, it worked. Bangkok overwhelmed me in the best possible way. The humidity, the traffic, the neon signs, the smells of gasoline, grilled meat, and spices filling crowded streets. The chaos felt louder than my thoughts. For the first time in months, my mind became quiet. I stayed in cheap hostels filled with strangers from every corner of the world. Australians, Canadians, Germans, people who introduced themselves by where they'd traveled instead of who they actually were. Everyone seemed untethered, temporary free. At night, we drank cheap beer on rooftop bars and talked about life like philosophers instead of emotionally lost 20-somethings avoiding reality. I met a woman from Sweden who said home was just a social construct. A British guy who hadn't spoken to his family in 4 years. A couple who sold everything they owned to backpack indefinitely across Asia. They fascinated me. I wanted whatever they had, or at least what I thought they had. One night on a beach in Phuket, slightly drunk and emotionally cracked open, I stared out at the ocean and thought, maybe I don't have to go back. That thought changed my life. 3 months later, I quit my job, sold most of my furniture, put the rest in storage. My mother cried. My father called it irresponsible. My friends said they were jealous. Ryan never reached out. And just like that, I became one of those women online. The women with passports full of stamps and captions about freedom. At first, it felt intoxicating. I woke up in different countries every few weeks. I learned airport codes, currency conversions, how to pack my entire life into a backpack, how to smile through loneliness, how to flirt with strangers I'd never see again. I also learned how addictive reinvention can become. Because in a new country, nobody knows who you used to be. You can become anyone. In Italy, I became romantic. In Bali, spiritual. In Berlin, reckless. In Greece, carefree. In Vietnam, adventurous. But every performance ended the same way. Alone in another unfamiliar room, staring at myself in the mirror, feeling the emptiness return. The strange thing about loneliness is that crowded places often make it worse. I remember New Year's Eve in Barcelona. Thousands of people flooded the streets. Music echoed between buildings. Champagne sprayed through the air. Everyone kissed at midnight. And I stood in the middle of that celebration feeling completely detached from humanity. I smiled for photos, posted a glamorous video online, then walked back to my Airbnb and cried in the shower until sunrise. There were beautiful moments too. I don't want to lie about that. Watching sunrise over Cappadocia in a hot air balloon, swimming beside sea turtles in Indonesia, hearing church bells ring across Prague, watching cherry blossoms fall in Kyoto, driving through Iceland while snow-covered volcanic fields, those moments mattered. They were real. But beauty and healing are not the same thing. That took me years to understand. Around year 3 of traveling, people started treating me differently online. I became the travel girl, the brave, independent woman, the free spirit, but in reality, I was emotionally deteriorating. I struggled forming stable relationships because I was always leaving. I dated people temporarily, a photographer in Lisbon, a bartender in New York, a scuba instructor in Bali, a musician in Melbourne. Everything burned brightly and ended quickly. I convinced myself temporary love hurt less. But honestly, temporary connections slowly hollowed me out. Human beings are not built for endless goodbyes. One of the hardest moments happened in Peru. I became close friends with a woman named Elena from Argentina. We traveled together for nearly 4 months. Shared buses, hostels, stories, secrets people normally reveal only after years of friendship. That's another strange thing about travelers. Sometimes you tell strangers your deepest wounds because subconsciously you know they'll disappear before they can hurt you with them. One night in Cusco, after too much wine, Elena asked me something nobody else had asked directly. "What are you running from?" I laughed, deflected, changed the subject, but she wouldn't let it go. "You move constantly," she said softly. "People who are truly at peace don't need to escape every month." That sentence unsettled me deeply, because part of me already knew. Travel had stopped being exploration. It had become avoidance. Avoidance of grief, avoidance of intimacy, avoidance of stillness, avoidance of myself. But once a coping mechanism starts working, it becomes difficult to stop. Movement became my drug. Whenever sadness surfaced, I booked another flight. Whenever anxiety became unbearable, I changed cities. Whenever loneliness caught up to me, I surrounded myself with new people. I kept believing the next place would finally heal me. Maybe Japan, maybe Italy, maybe Morocco, maybe another beach, another mountain, another sunset. But pain is incredibly efficient at packing. It always arrived before me. Then the pandemic happened, and suddenly the entire world stopped moving. I was in Mexico City when borders started closing. At first, everyone treated it like an adventure. Travelers drinking together, hostels buzzing nervously, people joking about being stranded. But within weeks, everything changed. Flights canceled, cities shut down, streets emptied. For the first time in years, I couldn't run. I rented a tiny apartment and stayed there alone for nearly 5 months. Those months changed me. Without constant movement, distraction disappeared. And underneath everything, I found exhaustion. Crushing exhaustion. I realized I hadn't emotionally rested in years. I'd only distracted myself continuously. New cities, new excitement, new food, new people, new validation. But emotionally, I was starving. There were days during lockdown when I barely spoke, days when silence felt physically heavy. I started journaling because there was nothing else to do, and those journals became terrifyingly honest. I don't know who I am anymore. I'm scared I built my entire identity around running away. I don't know how to stay still. One night, I video called my mother. She looked older. That startled me. I realized I had missed birthdays, Christmases, funerals, family dinners, ordinary moments. While chasing extraordinary experiences, I had abandoned almost everything stable in my life. And the hardest truth? Nobody was really waiting for me anymore. My old friends had children now, careers, mortgages, lives that continued without me. I had become a visitor everywhere, even in my own life. Still, when restrictions eased, I left again, because awareness and change are not the same thing. I wish healing worked like a movie, one realization, one breakthrough, one dramatic transformation. But real healing is slower. Messier. Sometimes you learn the lesson long before you're emotionally ready to live differently, so I kept moving. Turkey, Croatia, Portugal, Egypt, France, and eventually Paris. The panic attack beneath the Eiffel Tower wasn't random. It was the collapse of years of emotional suppression. Earlier that evening, I'd been at dinner with a group of travelers. Everyone was stylish, beautiful, interesting, the kind of people who casually talked about countries the way others discuss restaurants. Then someone asked me a simple question. "So where do you live now?" And I froze, because I genuinely didn't know. I laughed awkwardly and said something vague about being between places. But internally something shattered. I realized I had spent years untethered, no home, no roots, no real community, no deep intimacy, just motion. That night after the panic attack, I walked back alone through Paris while rain drizzled softly across glowing streets. Couples sat inside cafes laughing together, cars hissed across wet pavement, and suddenly I felt overwhelmingly tired. Not physically, soul tired. I reached my hotel room, sat on the floor beside the bed, and cried harder than I had cried since Ryan left. Not because of him anymore, because I finally understood something. I had spent years trying to heal externally, trying to collect enough beauty to compensate for inner emptiness. But healing doesn't happen geographically. You cannot outrun unresolved pain through scenery. The next morning I booked a flight home. Not another destination, not another adventure. Home. I remember landing in Portland feeling terrified. Coming home after years away is strange. People expect wisdom, transformation, confidence. Instead, I felt fragile, like someone returning from a war nobody knew they'd been fighting. My mother hugged me at the airport for a very long time. Neither of us said much. When we got into her car, she glanced at me gently and asked, "Are you staying this time?" And immediately I started crying. Because honestly, I didn't know. The first few weeks back were brutal. Stillness felt unbearable. I'd wake up instinctively checking flight deals. I felt anxious in routine, restless, claustrophobic. It shocked me how addicted I had become to escape. Without constant novelty, I had to confront ordinary life again. And ordinary life terrified me. Grocery stores, laundry, quiet evenings, family conversations. Those things sound simple. But when you spend years constantly stimulating yourself, normal life feels emotionally deafening. I also had to face grief I'd postponed for years. The breakup with Ryan, my fear of abandonment, my complicated relationship with my father. My inability to stay emotionally vulnerable long enough to build lasting relationships. I started therapy. Real therapy. Not wellness podcasts, not inspirational quotes online, not journaling beside waterfalls. Actual painful therapy. The kind where you leave emotionally wrecked. One session changed me forever. My therapist asked, when was the last time you truly felt emotionally safe? I couldn't answer immediately. Then unexpectedly, I remembered being 8 years old, curled beside my mother during a thunderstorm while she rubbed my hair and old movies played softly in the background. Safe, still, loved. And suddenly something cracked open inside me. I realized I had spent years mistaking intensity for fulfillment. I thought happiness had to feel cinematic, extraordinary, exciting. But maybe peace was quieter than that. Maybe peace looked like staying. That realization slowly changed my life. Not dramatically, quietly. I got a part-time job at a bookstore downtown, nothing glamorous. But every morning the same elderly man came in for crossword books. A teenage girl sat reading poetry every Thursday after school. A middle-aged woman always cried while reading romance novels and pretended she had allergies whenever someone noticed. And somehow those ordinary people grounded me more than all the airports in the world ever had. For the first time in years, my life had rhythm again. Morning coffee, rainy afternoons, conversations that lasted longer than hostile friendships, dinner with my mother, neighbors who remembered my name. Healing arrived quietly, not in Bali, not in Greece, not beneath the Eiffel Tower. It arrived while folding laundry one Sunday evening. I remember standing there holding warm towels fresh from the dryer when I suddenly realized something shocking. I wasn't trying to run anymore. That realization almost made me cry, because for nearly 7 years, every emotion inside me demanded movement, a new city, a new distraction, a new beginning, and suddenly, I was okay staying where I was. Months later, I accidentally ran into Ryan at a grocery store. Not the dramatic reunion I once imagined. No screaming, no tears, no cinematic music, just 2 people standing beside the fruit aisle, pretending history wasn't standing between them. He looked older, kinder somehow. We talked awkwardly for a few minutes. Then he told me he was married now. A daughter, too. For a second, I waited for the old pain to return, but it didn't. And that shocked me more than anything, because for years I thought healing meant forgetting someone. But real healing is quieter than that. It's remembering without collapsing. Before leaving, he looked at me carefully and smiled. "You seem peaceful now," he said softly. Peaceful. That word stayed with me long after he walked away. Because nobody had ever described me that way before. Not adventurous, not exciting, not free-spirited. Peaceful. And somehow that meant more to me than every compliment I'd collected while traveling the world. That night I sat alone in my childhood bedroom thinking about all the versions of myself I had tried to become. The woman in Greece, pretending she wasn't lonely. The traveler in Tokyo wandering crowded streets at 2 a.m. because she was afraid to return to an empty hotel room. The smiling girl in Morocco posting beautiful photos minutes after having a panic attack in a cafe bathroom. I felt compassion for all of them, because she wasn't fake. She was just exhausted. Exhausted from trying to heal externally. Exhausted from believing happiness was always somewhere else. And honestly, I think a lot of people live that way now. Constantly chasing, constantly consuming, constantly moving. Terrified that if they stop for even one moment, they'll finally hear the emptiness they've been outrunning. But eventually your soul catches up to you. Mine did in Paris. And thank God it did. Because losing myself completely forced me to finally meet myself honestly. Not the curated version, the real one, the lonely one, the grieving one, the scared one, the human one. And once I stopped trying to escape her, something incredible happened. she stopped feeling empty. These days, my life is much smaller than before, and somehow infinitely richer. I plant flowers with my mother in the backyard. I work at the bookstore. I take long evening walks without photographing sunsets anymore. Years ago, that kind of life would have terrified me. Now it feels sacred. Sometimes people still message me online asking for travel advice. They tell me they dream of escaping their lives. And maybe part of me understands that instinct forever. Travel can absolutely change you. It can humble you, open you, wake you up. But it cannot save you from yourself, because no matter how far you go, you take your mind with you, your grief with you, your loneliness with you, your fears with you. Pain doesn't care about passport stamps. I learned that the hard way. But I also learned something else. Healing is possible. Not the glamorous kind sold online, real healing. The slow kind. The kind that happens quietly over ordinary Tuesdays, over therapy sessions, over uncomfortable honesty, over learning how to build a life you no longer need to escape from. Tonight, the rain is falling softly outside again. The old house creaks the same way it did when I was a little girl. My mother is asleep upstairs. And me? I'm sitting beside the window with a cup of tea, realizing something that took me 7 years, 30 countries, thousands of miles, and one nervous breakdown to finally understand. The thing I was searching for across the world was never out there. It was the ability to come home to myself, and for the first time in a very long time, I finally have.